block out the sun? What could possibly go wrong? The UK, along with the USA, Australia and lots more countries, are experimenting with spraying a bunch of stuff into the atmosphere to reflect the energy of the sun back into space so that we can take control of the Earth's temperature like a thermostat. Nothing to worry about. What could possibly go wrong? The human race has absolutely no history of ever overconfidently meddling in things that we thought we understood, but it turned out later on we really didn't, and completely cocking it up. That's never happened before. So you can be confident that we have everything under control. You should just trust the science. Listen to the experts, because staying apart keeps us together. Oh, sorry, that's the old one. What's the new one? Oh, that's right. Because spraying the skies gives us good weather. My name is Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and this is not a drill. Our politicians couldn't organise a route in a brothel, as evidenced by the way they've completely screwed up the COVID response, the economy, the cost of living, and our children's futures. But when it comes to mucking about with the climate, on the only habitable ball of rock that we have, well, rest easy. I'm sure they know what they're doing this time. The UK is apparently mere weeks away from resuming their previously cancelled experiments to dim the sun by spraying reflective particles into the atmosphere. They cancelled their previous program known as SPICE because why not throw a Dune reference into your megalomaniacal geoengineering plans just for fun? They cancelled that back in 2012 due to public pushback, which resulted in budget issues. But 13 years later, they've come up with £50 million, and the purpose of these latest experiments is to prepare the technology for use at scale. This is meant to be among the last of the experiments before the tech can be rolled out globally at industrial scale so we can all be saved from that dastardly warm weather that is surely going to kill us all any minute now. Except that the number of people killed by the cold actually far outweighs the number killed by heat, despite the propaganda you may have seen. This graph was published a few years ago as proof that rising temperatures were going to be deadly. In blue are the deaths attributed to cold weather. In red, the deaths from warm weather. Naturally, countries with warmer climates show more heat-related deaths. This graph seems to imply that in places like Croatia and Italy, heat deaths already outnumber cold deaths. This was used as proof that if we allowed the world to warm any further, then that heat would kill us. Thing is, this graph and others like it are actually lies. It's as if the authors have read the book How to Lie with Statistics, which is weird because it sure looks like Bill Gates is a fan of that book, which is weird because we'll be talking about him again in just a minute. The lie in these statistics is revealed when we look at the scale down the bottom. They are not the same on each side. In fact, the cold deaths have been compressed 5 times compared to the heat deaths, or to say it another way, those blue lines should all be 5 times longer than they are, or the red lines should be 1/5 of their current size, in order to compare them. And instantly you understand that if the world were to warm a little bit, then it would actually save lives. Because clearly we can see that the number of additional heat-related deaths would actually be a mere fraction of the number of cold-related deaths that would be avoided. But what about the disasters, I hear you say? The climate emergency has caused wildfires and floods and hurricanes and, hey, let's blame it for the earthquakes and the volcanoes too. Well, if you look at the last 100 years, the average number of climate, weather and disaster-related deaths per decade has declined massively. And there is no evidence of any uptick. Oh, and while we're on the subject of statistics, this graph is in absolute numbers, not as a proportion of the population. So if we were to factor in population growth, then the number of people being killed by the climate and natural disasters today is the tiniest of tiny fractions of what it was just 100 years ago. The fact is that whether you look at crop yields or burned area globally or hurricanes or green coverage of the globe, our planet is getting better, not worse. But don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. We have, so we are told, a climate emergency, and we need to dim the sun to save the planet. But before we get too doom and gloom about what harm might be done by spraying these aerosols into the atmosphere, let's just pause and actually take a look at the technologies proposed, because there's some big differences between the different technologies, and some of them are honestly pretty harmless as best as I can tell. whilst others raise some big red flags. There are three main ideas for solar radiation management, and those are high-level spraying of either sulfur dioxide or calcium carbonate into the stratosphere, where particulates can remain for 2 years on average, but can persist and continue to affect the climate for much longer than that. There's also lower-level tropospheric spraying, where it persists for maybe a few weeks. Then there's marine cloud brightening, which is spraying salt into the stratocumulus clouds to encourage more nucleation, making the clouds denser, brighter, and more reflective. Now, that salt will only be in the air for a few days. So, as you can already tell, these technologies are not the same as each other. Spraying salt over the ocean, I'm not going to lose any sleep over salt falling into salt water a few days after being sprayed into the air far out to sea. But sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere for years? Yeah, I've got some questions about that one. First and foremost, I'm old enough to remember when the great environmental apocalypse was not climate change or even global warming, it was a thing called acid rain, right alongside the hole in the ozone layer. Well, I hate to break it to you, but sulfur dioxide is an ozone-destroying acid. So if you want to make your acid rain nightmares come true, spraying sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere seems like a really good way to do it. Also, I have another question. If we dim the sun and it works, won't that reduce the amount of energy we get from our beloved solar panels? Now we'll have to mine more minerals and manufacture more panels with all of that environmental impact just to compensate for the fact that we turned the sun down. Also, the climate record clearly shows that ice ages tend to start far more suddenly than interglacials, and they are far more devastating to life. And we are in an interglacial period right now. But at some point, that's going to end, and we will enter another ice age. And that's not going to be good news. Can we be certain in any way at all that we know enough about what we're doing that we're not going to accidentally plunge the planet into an ice age, or even just another year without a summer like what happened in Europe in 1816 because of the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia the year before? Volcanoes spew out sulfur dioxide. Big volcanoes push that sulfur dioxide high into the stratosphere where it persists for a few years. And one big eruption in Indonesia was all it took to cause crop failures in North America and Europe the following year. They called it the year without a summer, 1816. You can look it up. Do we really know enough about what we're doing here? And are we really sure that this cure won't turn out to be way, way worse than the disease? The good news is that over the last 15 years or so, time and again, public outcry has successfully shut down similar experiments. I mentioned the spice trials in the UK already, but other experiments funded by Bill Gates, George Soros, and numerous others have also been shut down in other parts of the world due to public backlash. So we've done it before and we can do it again. Solar radiation management is a solution in search of a problem. We don't need it, and you can't change my mind about that until and unless we see the evidence in the number of people dying from extreme heat, or in the number and severity of extreme weather events, or in the Arctic actually becoming ice-free, or something. We keep getting apocalyptic headlines and predictions, and yet the world just keeps spinning, and the data tells us good news, not bad, and makes liars out of these so-called experts. Messing with the atmosphere to block out the sun? It is all risk with no reward. It is all downside. And the people running these experiments have a long, long history of cocking things up. So whilst some of the possible technologies that they may be testing really aren't a concern to me because of how short-lived their effects will be, other technologies that they might choose to test are a concern. But mostly what I'm actually concerned about is the normalizing of this idea of geoengineering on a global scale. Because when it comes to the world's politicians, power brokers, and billionaires, we already know that if we give them an inch, they will take a mile. And until Elon Musk hurries up and starts terraforming Mars, this atmosphere here on Earth, it's the only one we've got. And I kind of like it the way it is. My name's Topher Field, this is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to keep up with the world as it changes around you. I am 100% viewer supported, so if this video has been informative, thought-provoking, or even just enjoyable, then head on over to goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com and grab a copy of my best-selling books or my award-winning DVD, my t-shirts, my hoodies, and you'll be supporting me to keep doing what I do. Thanks for watching to the end. The algorithm loves you and so do I. Please like, comment, subscribe, check out this recommended video here, and as always, stay free.